Hey everybody, welcome to the Flat Thunder channel. Today we're going to do a real trivial task. We're going to change the oil in my wife's 2009 Ford Focus. Should be relatively easy. Stay tuned, I'll give you a couple tips and tricks. This is a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine in a 2009 Ford Focus. It calls for 520 engine oil. I always use Pennzoil, just my personal preference, but you can use any oil that meets the correct certifications. And then I always use Fram oil filters. This one calls for a pH 3614. The first tip and trick that I'm going to tell you is, on your wife's car, always keep track of the oil changes. Even though she says she's going to do it, she never remembers, and you always have to ask her. I think this one's way overdue. Luckily it didn't blow up. So first tip and trick, always keep track of the oil changes in your wife's vehicle. I like to use Google Keep Notes and log in all the information. So unless we skipped one, the last time the oil was changed in this was March of 2019. Way too many miles, way too long ago. Don't do that. I always like to warm the engine up so the oil will drain from the pan rather quickly and take some of the sludge out with it as it's coming out. So that's your first step. Second step, you want to lift the vehicle and support it with a jack and jack stands. Don't forget the jack stands. The internet people will really flip out if you forget the jack stands. But in all seriousness, don't forget the jack stands. I met someone a few years ago that had a truck dropped on his face. He looked a little goofy. That wasn't the problem. He was just a little goofy in the head, if you know what I mean. So always use jack stands. Looking under the vehicle, if you look for, usually there's a notch in the seam or a notch in the side of the ground effects or plastic trim. That usually identifies that a good jacking point is right behind it. Here's a solid part of the unibody structure. I always like to jack it up on the K-frame suspension there if you can, because I know that's solid. So we're going to put the jack there, raise it, then we're going to slide a jack stand in as a safety. There's a jack stand. Make sure you place it in a spot where it won't shoot out. Sometimes I lower the jack a little bit and put a little weight on it too to make sure it's set. Pro tip number 2, if you don't have a creeper, keep an old scrap cardboard box around. It's good to lay on the floor so you don't hurt your back or have to lay in the stone driveway. Okay, here's our drain plug. I never can remember what size it is. I'm going to write that down in my notes for next time. It's not 9/16. Half inch is tight. Must be a 13 millimeter. Sure you got your pan in place. I already found out it wasn't English, so it's a 13 millimeter. And then if someone really bull moose tightened this, always bring 2 wrenches down. That way, if they're combination box and open end, you can take the second wrench and hook it on here for more leverage. Give you a little better angle here.
So that mechanical advantage makes it way easier to take that off. Now always make sure if it's a side plug, you account for the projectile motion of the oil coming out. While that's draining, I always like to lower the car so it's level again to make sure all the oil comes out of the oil pan. Always be sure to wipe the end of the plug off before you put it in. And make sure you check for any contaminants or metal particles. The ends of the plugs are usually magnetic. Luckily we don't have anything shiny or metallic on this plug, so the engine's still good. Alright. I'm going to clean the sealing surface. This one has a rubber washer type of seal on it. We'll seal on that face. Now the right way to do this is use a torque wrench, but I don't hardly ever use a torque wrench on an oil pan bolt unless it's the Super Duty. So you have your pan below the oil filter, and a lot of times it'll take a wrench, but this small oil filter I usually can get with just my hands. Vertical oil filter is always getting messy. You're gonna take your new oil filter, keep the box to put the old one in after it drains. Take our new jug of oil, put just a little bit, which is way too much because I'm trying to do it underneath here. Put just a little bit of fresh oil on the filter to lubricate the O-ring gasket. Now it's really important to make sure the old O-ring came off. You can see it clearly here that it's not on there, but every once in a while this O-ring from the old filter will stick to the engine, and you'll put the new filter on and it'll just shoot oil everywhere. So that's another one of your pro tips. Always check to make sure this O-ring or gasket came off of the old filter. Only hand tighten the oil filter. Don't use a wrench. It's actually probably over tight, but I want to make sure it won't fall off. But hand tight only, no wrench. Okay, everything's done under here. All we have to do is add the new oil, and this job's complete. Here's the oil fill cap. Another pro tip, I mentioned it in other videos. I always use half of an old oil can as a funnel. You just cut the bottom off of an old oil can. I like to keep some old rags in it to keep dirt out from the inside. And I keep the cap on. So this is a 5-quart jug, we need 4.5. So we'll leave it, dump it all in down to the 1/2 quart mark.
Pro tip, I always like to crawl under the vehicle with it running. Make sure you watch your fingers and stay away from moving in hot parts while it's still in the jack stand, so I can view the oil filter and the drain plug just to make sure no oil is shooting out from anywhere it's not supposed to. So let's check it out. Make sure all the oil is in first. All right, we're good to go. Pro tip, always make sure the jack stands are far away from the vehicle before you lower it. Okay, the only other thing we need to do is check the tire pressures, because I know one of them's low. But the only other thing we need to do for the oil change is some newer vehicles has a oil life monitor. You need to reset that inside the car so it's accurate to the oil change. And right now I don't really remember how to do that, so we're gonna have to look at the book or fumble our way through the navigation system. I always like to check the dipstick, make sure it's got the right amount of oil in it before putting it into service too. Thanks for watching, everybody. I know this is a rather trivial video, but someone somewhere needs to know how to change the oil in their Ford Focus, and I thought I'd contribute a little bit. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, leave your questions and comments in the section below, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Alright guys, that's all she wrote for this episode. We're going to take her for a test drive, see if that low pressure tire light goes off, and we'll see you next time.